Here's what's going on. Onyx Storm came out 3 weeks ago. So it is time for me to start my Violet cosplay because I want to wear it to WonderCon, which is in, let me check, approximately 50 days. Okay, 50 days. I can do it. We can do this. Not only have I had ideas, I have also gotten 3 different videos on how to make dragon scale corsets. So, you know, I went ahead and I threw together something a little quick with just some materials that I had laying around, and I like it. I like it. And then I reread Fourth Wing. Let me pull it up. Hang on, I have to go get a copy of the book. It literally looks like I've never opened this before. Let's find it. On page 22 of the paperback copy, it says, I dress quickly and everything feels like it belongs to someone else, though it's obviously tailored to my size. My tunic is replaced by a light-fitting black t-shirt that covers my arms, and my breezy pants are exchanged for leather ones that hug every curve. Then she laces me into a vest-style corset over the shirt. Combination of leather and fabric I don't recognize covers me from collarbone to just below my waist, wrapping over my breasts and crossing up and over my shoulders. I finger the hidden sheaths sewn diagonally across the rib cage. Between my ribs and the sheaths at my thighs, the blades are easily accessible. And then she asks, what is this? I test the material just above my heart, scratching with my fingernail, something I designed. Dragon scales. There you go, they're tiny scales. So we know it goes to just below her waist, and that it comes up to her collarbone and across her shoulders. But it says it wraps across her shoulders. Let me read that again. Combination I don't recognize covers me from collarbone to just below my waist, wrapping over my breasts and crossing up and over my shoulders. So there's some sort of like crossing thing on the corset, but it comes to her collarbones and then just below her waist, and then we know it ties up the back from when Xaden unties it later. So, all right, let me do a quick sketch and be right back with that information. Okay, this is the rough sketch that I have done. I'm sure I have a better one to show you, but I like the idea that Mira is kind of trying to hide what she's done here. So it says it crosses across from her shoulders, across her breasts. So I figure, you know, we do this kind of like strappy leather almost, that then maybe comes back around and turns into the sheaths for the daggers. Although you want you want to pull down on them. So that is what I am thinking. And I will say, I don't know if you can see the texture on this, but I really like the texture that I got on this. It's just not quite perfect, you feel? So I gotta get it out from the shelf. So I gotta move the car. We're gonna play some Tetris real quick in here. Unless I left it over there. I might have left it over there in that corner. I don't know. Here is the sitch. This is the fabric that I found, in other words. I got a black power mesh. I was thinking about this for the undershirt because she said thin, right? This will be very hot though. Power mesh, while mesh is very synthetic, so it's very hot. Honestly, I might just get like a black long sleeve shirt. I have just like tons of scraps of this lovely pleather fabric. Oh, I might have a couple different kinds though. So there's, oh yeah, this one is more matte. And then this one I think is the same as this one. Does that make sense? And then I have this, which is even less likely to be used, honestly. Why do I have so much of this is the real question. Bro, it's so stuck together. This like faux patent leather, like faux, bro, okay. This like faux patent leather, like faux latex kind of situation. So that's a thing. And then I have tons of this like stretchy, scaly fabric, but it is a, oh, that's what I just said, stretchy. It is a stretch, but as you can see, we can make it into a corset. We can figure it out. And then last but not least, I just found this like nice bridal weight satin in black to use for something. I also just found this full roll of what appears to be faux leather. There just might be spiders living in the tube. I wouldn't put it against them. I'm gonna put this over here. You know what we're going to do first and foremost, corset. All of my corset patterns that I like to use are this shape. You can't see it, but you know, like a nice little sweetheart neckline and at the waist. That means we have to draft a new pattern. I don't want to. Let me find my pattern book and see what I've got. I gotta have something. I'm not in my usual editing or recording setup, so sorry if the audio is a little whack. I'm also in an Airbnb, so sorry if it's a little ASMR-y. I'm trying to be kind to everyone. To make the pattern, the first thing that I did was trace my slopers, and then I added an additional seam to make it more corsety. I also dropped my armholes a little bit at the side seam, and then I tightened them a little bit on each of the princess seams, just the regular ones that are there. I'm doing my regular seam allowance, so all of the in-between seams I am doing 1/2 inch, and anything that is just going to be an edge or a hem will get 1/4 inch. And I basically did that for all 4 pieces. The only one that got a little weird was the center front piece, but you will see that in a bit. This patterning method that I'm doing here is called the slash and spread. So I'm tracing my basic piece and then I'm adding the seam allowance. So I'm going to cut along that seam and then tape on more paper to add the seam allowance to each side. This is just a paper saver. I even use scraps of what I've cut off to tape on for the seam allowance. These last 2 steps are the 2 most vital steps. Do not forget to mark your pattern pieces so you know what is the front, what is the back, and you're not putting any pieces in weird spots because they aren't labeled. Also, do not forget to transfer your notches. They are so important when you're sewing. About here is when I decided it would be really fun to have a point at the center front waist. So that's why you see me making this piece much more difficult than it needs to be. It's also a little hard to tell here, but I did take the shoulder at the armhole in 3/4 inch, and I believe I took the neck hole in about 1/2 inch, just to give a little more wiggle room in the shoulders and more movement. I really wanted the shoulder seams to match up, so I folded down our seam allowance and lined them up to mark it, and then I didn't know what to do with this, honestly. You'll see me figure it out in a moment. This is a lot of me workshopping ideas in the moment, and I thought it was really authentic to keep in some of the mistakes that I made or choices that I changed while I was doing this patterning process, because nothing is ever set in stone, truly. I thought it would be really fun and cutesy if there was no shoulder seam right here, and then the best part is you can't even see it in the final thing. Because my main fabric is a spandex stretch, I used an interfacing that's very sturdy to make it act like a woven, because it's basically just going to fuse on and act like a backing to not allow any stretch. I knew I was cutting it really close on fitting all of my pattern pieces on this one piece of interfacing, so I did use a different type of interfacing for some of the pieces. That's why you see me so strategically placing all of the pieces on this one.
If you remember my original sketch, you know I had those straps going across it, which I kind of picture as Mira disguising the true dragon scales of it, so I used one of the smaller pieces of pleather and I cut 2-inch strips to make those straps. Now this is when I started feeling a little crazy. This is when I decided I wanted the fabric to have a little bit of sheen. And if you remember, Mira's dragon Tiny, that she got the scales from, is a green dragon, but her corset is always described as black, so I wanted to give the material just the lightest bit of a green sheen to it. So I'm using 3 different iridescent fabric paints, as well as a glow-in-the-dark kind of translucent paint to attempt to get that look. I ended up having to add some of the acrylic green because I wasn't getting the dark green that I wanted, but watering it down gave the perfect, just little metallic sheen and slate green color that I was looking for. I've never really understood everyone saying her corset is black when Tiny is a green dragon. Like, that never made sense to me. So, like, is there fabric over the scales or is there not? I don't know. Also, their uniform tops doesn't make sense to me. I almost forgot to mention, but I painted them and then I let them completely dry and then I ironed them flat because some of them were starting to bubble a little bit. It was a little strange. To pin the straps on initially, I did start at the waist and I pulled this first strap down pretty tight to get it around. And then I did take it a lot further across the body than I thought I was going to, and I also ended up completely redoing the back because it was way too tight to get all 3 straps in there. I've said straps way more times than I thought I ever would in one sitting. I don't know that I ever really showed it in this video, but I did end up opening the side seams at the bottom under the waist and tucking the ends into the actual corset so they don't go all the way down on one side. I did in fact eyeball these first 2, and then when I was actually sewing them on, I did do one entire side, the side that's on the bottom, and then I went in with measurements and made sure that everything was perfectly even, like as even as I could possibly get it for the straps. This first round of pinning was just making sure that I liked everything exactly how it was and I wasn't gonna second guess myself after it was all sewn on. Here you can see me spreading out these bottom sections more because I decided that I wanted the interior V section to be where the knives are going to be stored. Eventually the sheaths will go there. I ended up using those scraps of bridal satin that I had for the lining, and I top stitched down all of those seam allowances to make it really nice and flat inside. The thing that I have found with using pleather like this, especially for details, it is always easier and more accurate to hand sew it down and then go over it with your sewing machine, even if you have a Teflon foot. Like, you have to have a Teflon foot for how sticky this stuff is, but hand sewing it down is such a game changer to get really accurate lines. This is where it gets a little complicated, so I did in fact slow the next couple sections down so that you can really get all of the details here. When you're finishing a vest like this, you have to do things very meticulously or you will not be able to turn it. So the first thing I like to do is finish one sleeve or armhole completely and then do the rest of it in little bits. That's the easiest way that I have found to do it. Like I said, do one armhole and iron everything as you go. Iron each section as you go. It will make everything so much easier. And then you basically want to line up your other sleeve, wrong sides together, and then reach inside one of the openings and grasp a little bit together. And then I would suggest working in 3 to 4 inch sections. That's the easiest way to do it, that you're going to get everything accurate and everything looking nicely from the outside still. It's going to seem very tedious, but it is truly the easiest way to do it. You're not going to be able to do this whole thing in one time, especially if your shoulders are really thin. So just start with some notches, start with matching up some seams, and go bit by bit. You're going to struggle to get some of it, but you're going to get it done, I promise. Like I said, best way to do it, just slowly working your way around the armhole. Just little section by little section. Once I'm done sewing it all and I have all the pins out, I will once again completely right it, and then I will go iron that armhole, and now they're both done. Hardest part-ish is over. I did the neck hole next because I knew it would be a lot harder if I did it last. So I did the exact same thing as the armhole, where I reached in from the bottom and I grabbed the two sides and I kind of pulled them together. And then you just kind of have to pull out the rest of it. And I did this in halves. And I also did about 2 inches of the top of the center back seam, since that's going to be where our eyelets go eventually. That'll be a fully finished seam in the end. Getting that corner nice and crisp is really easy to do right now. Or it's a lot easier to do now than it would be in a few minutes. I'm doing the exact same thing I did with the armhole, starting in little sections using a lot of pins. I love my pins. If there's one thing I'm going to do, it's use a lot of pins. When I do corners that I know I'm going to fully flip and trim the edges, I like to go back and forth a few times right next to the corner so I know it's not going to unravel after I clip it. And always clip your corners. It's the only way to get really crisp, nice corners. You can't have all that extra seam allowance in there. It just doesn't work. Also, guess what? Now you're done with all of the really hard seams. The bottom and the center back are super easy to do from here on out. You're going to do it exactly as you would do any other lining. Flip inside out. I like to leave a little 4-inch gap on one of the center back seams and I did overlock it so that it wouldn't unravel, and then I just hand stitched it closed after I turned it. I did make the choice to make this a corset without boning or without extra structure, and that's out of pure laziness. Normally I would have added a full third layer in the middle of canvas, and that is where I would have attached way too much boning, but I did not feel like dealing with that, and this was kind of a time crunch to get this done this week, but I am really liking the way it came out, and I think it's plenty sturdy, especially with all of that interfacing and all of the straps that are on it. Like, there was no need for boning, personally, for me. To sew up the opening, I did use a hidden hand stitch, just like a little whip stitch. I had footage of it, or I sure thought I did, but I just slowly moved further and further out of the camera frame. That's on me. Sorry, guys. I have this terrible tendency to do that, and I thought this new camera angle was gonna fix that, and it did not. I did bump the camera less this time though, so that was great for our footage. Very last thing that I am doing here is I'm going to pin the center front and make sure that both seams on the lining and the actual fabric match exactly perfectly. This will be more important in our next video. I was gonna pin more, and then I was like, I have to go drive 6 hours, and I haven't packed yet, so that's why I didn't.
Okay, sorry, this is kind of a rush. I'm trying to get this video done so that I can come out this week. We're leaving town a lot earlier than I expected to go on a trip, so here we are. But I got the base structure all done. Ta-da! Sorry, my dogs are barking. Still need to do the grommets, the eyelets on the back, but that will come with time. Here she is. I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad that I painted it with that paint because it gives it this nice, like, sheen, which, you know, it's dragon scale armor, so I would hope so. I also really like the way that this turned out. I wasn't sure. I need to go over it with the sewing machine still, but I also want to get everything else kind of pinned down exactly flat. You see how I pinned the center front seam? Yeah, and then we're gonna go over all of the hand stitching. So the hand stitching is not final, but this is what it's looking like. So far, I really like it. I really like how I tried to do, you can just barely see it, but I tried to get the leather to overlap the actual vest like a little bit on the corner here and like come out a little further, and it did do that. And then I want to do it so that these triangles on the side here, this is like just only slightly awkward. I want these triangles on the side here to be where the sheaths for the daggers go. And I am do want to make the daggers. So we know she carries 12. So if we do 4 on the corset, 4 on her thighs, and then 2 in the boots, that is 10. So we'll have to figure out somewhere to put 2 more. Yes, but this is it for now. Thank you. Please come back. I have something very new in an attempt to do the daggers. So fingers crossed that it works. Yes. Yeah. Wow. I got a split in my finger from the needle that I was using because the eye end was so pointed, but now I get to go finish my audiobook. Only 13 hours left. Go me. I'm 76% of the way through. Oh, I thought we were just gonna have like a 20-hour long battle and then the battle ended and